Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wonder Series. I'm your host, Denise Stegall. The Wonder Series is sponsored by livinghealthylist.com, and we are here every week on Wednesdays, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, to help you think outside the box. We want you to start to wonder what life could be like if you looked at it from another perspective, if you opened your mind to the opportunities and the possibilities that are out there. Who would you be? What would you do? And what would you create if you did so? And ultimately, how could that help you find that healthy, happy lifestyle that works for you? So I am really excited about my conversation today with Linda Lederman. Linda is the owner of Balaboosta's Secret. I just love that word, Balaboosta. Let's talk about Linda. Linda's cooking skills were so bad. How bad were they? Her own family banned her from cooking when she was a teenager. Happily, her skills have dramatically improved. Now she has over 1,000 cookbooks, 1,000 cookbooks. She is a graduate of the Rouxbe Cooking School, as am I, so this is really exciting. And also the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, AKA IIN, and has countless cooking courses from the International Culinary Center and Natural Gourmet Institute under her belt. She's got a lot going on here. She is a kitchen confidence coach, and again, the owner of Balaboosta's Secret, where she helps busy moms with meal planning, prep, and cooking lessons, as well as coaches them on how to serve dinners with side dishes of games and clever conversation. We love this. Whether you're a novice at cooking or looking to add some oomph to your dinner routine, Linda's all about making ordinary weeknight meals extraordinary with speed, ease, yum, and lots of fun. Linda, welcome.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, this is so exciting. So that's your bio. Who is Linda and what do you really do every day?
Okay, so that really is me. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I had my kids late in life. And at that point, I decided that I really needed to take a little time and actually enjoy it because I had them late in life. We had a struggle having our family. So as they were getting a little bit older and they started having friends come over for dinner and play dates and sleepovers, their friends would say, "My mom doesn't cook like this. We don't have meals like this. We don't play games at the table. Can you help her? Can you teach her?" And I thought, well, how sad is that kids aren't enjoying their meals every night and they're not having conversation at the table? Because truthfully, most of our lives revolve around food, whether that's our birthdays or our holidays, our celebrations, whatever, it's food. And it's not rocket scientist. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to make it delicious. Mm-hmm. So I took it from the mouth of babes. And I created a business where I teach moms those simple tricks. And a balaboosta is a Yiddish term, an old-fashioned Yiddish term for a woman who makes a fine home. Now, ironically, I live down the street from Martha Stewart. We have very, very different fine homes. We all know Martha Stewart, or we can imagine.
I think we've all kind of been there at some point, watching some TV program. We've been to Martha's house.
Right.
So at least her garden.
That is so not my house. My fine home is the kind where everybody wants to be here. They know they're going to get fed well. They're going to have a great time. They can put their feet on the couches or on, they don't have to have a coaster under their glass. Not all my silverware matches, but they have a phenomenal experience. And if your kids feel comfortable like that to invite their friends over, that's a parent's dream, because now you get to know your kids' friends, you get to see their influences. Hopefully they'll become comfortable with you, they'll confide in you. And what better way to know what's going on in everybody's lives than to be able to communicate and have fun? So that's who I am.
I love it. I want to come and hang out at your house.
You're more than welcome.
Well, thank you. So it's always amazing. So you and I were talking earlier, and it turns out that you and I both went through the Rouxbe.com plant-based cooking certification. What made you take that class? I'm really intrigued because I know what my motivation was, but I'm intrigued to know what yours was.
Sure. I was on, I want to learn how to cook really, really well and all kinds of foods. I have been, and I don't really like labels, but for lack of a better word, a pescatarian since college. I don't eat meat or poultry, but I eat fish and mostly plant-based foods. My family's omnivore, they eat everything under the sun, and I'm really very comfortable cooking for them. I don't have a problem with it. It's just my choice of how I eat. And so I wanted to expand my repertoire of plant-based cooking. It adds variety, whether you are solely plant-based or not. So why wouldn't you want to learn more? And I'm all about learning all the time and expanding what I can do. So to me, it was a great opportunity. There were great teachers, great recipes, great skills to learn. Why not do it?
Absolutely. And I think for me, that was one of the motivations too. Like my background is nutrition and food. When I was in college, we one year we ran a dining hall, another year we ran a fine dining restaurant. So I've always been around food and cooking. I started cooking when I was 11. I remember the first thing I ever made was beef stew. The beef was out. Mom was going to be late. I had eaten beef stew before. There was a cookbook. Bada boom, there it was. But I agree, plant-based cooking, and people ask me all the time, are you a vegetarian? I'm not. But like you, there are certain things I choose to either avoid or just not to eat on a regular basis. I love plant-based cooking. It is so fun. It's so nutritious. And
it's so colorful.
Yes. And I think that's an important part, that having all of these things on a plate really kind of makes it attractive, especially for younger kids. I mean, I know your kids are older now, but you started cooking and doing all these things when your kids were young.
Right.
What were you making then versus what you were making now?
By the time my kids were born, and like I said, I did have them late in life, I was already a very good cook. I have to toot my own horn on that, because remember, I started out in my teenage years trying when I was so bad. So I had plenty of time to learn before I had my kids. And to this day, I'm always experimenting. I mean, with all those cookbooks I have, those 1,000 cookbooks, I don't follow a recipe. I just get inspiration. And if you have a well-stocked pantry and a well-stocked refrigerator and freezer, you can create anything without a recipe if you just know some really basic things. And actually, when I work with women, that's one of the things we do, is get your essential ingredients down and learn how to use them. So I was making all kinds of foods for my kids, because I am a strong believer in kids shouldn't eat kid food. There's no reason why they can't eat the same foods you're eating, and have them develop a palate so they can function in the adult world. I mean, I know people who have teenagers who still only eat mac and cheese and chicken fingers, and to me, that's a crime against humanity. But that's another story.
I would agree with you on that one. I'm going to pick on my nephew. So Robbie, if you're listening, I'm going to pick on you. He'll be 25, and when he was a kid, he would not eat a vegetable. There was not a vegetable that he liked. And I remember lots of hot dogs being on his plate, lots of mac and cheese. And at 25, he's finally getting to a point where he's like, okay, maybe if I'm going to take my girlfriend out to dinner, I've got to eat something a little bit more elegant than mac and cheese. But it's taken him a long time, because it wasn't something that they really focused on when he was a kid. The mac and cheese, it was easy. Hot dogs, because he would eat it. So I would agree with you. I think it's really important for kids to learn, because you get to a point where you're in your 20s and 30s and you're just learning how to eat, or learning about good nutrition.
One of the reasons why I do what I do is I think that, well, the studies show that people who have a sit-down family meal, the kids do better in school, they're better socially adjusted, they have better communication skills, blah, 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 blah. There's only good points to it. And a lot of people are reluctant to cook because they're unsure of their skills, or they don't know how to manage the time, don't know what to do. But if you can get all those wonderful things and give it to your family, why wouldn't you, number one? And number two, if you do it, then you are modeling good food practices, good family practices for your kids, so that when they go off on their own or when they raise their family, they can make that wonderful memory time very easily and very deliciously.
It's really important. I remember as a kid, we would sit at the table, mom and dad, my sister and I. As we got older, we probably did that less and less because of sports and activities. What do you recommend to your families, the women that you're working with, to make, even though everyone's busy, to still be able to bring people around the table more often than not?
Absolutely. Listen, my son was a school athlete. He's a college athlete at this point. My daughter's involved in all those activities as well. So I know those time crunches, and I know when the activities get done at 9 o'clock at night and you want to pull your hair out because nobody sat at the table. So I'm a realist. You don't have to do it 7 days a week. And if Sunday brunch is your only time, do a Sunday brunch. I mean, there's no rule that it's got to be dinner time. And, you can find out what works for you, and you can work your schedule around it. I think that's really, really an important thing to do.
I would agree. I was talking to somebody a little bit ago about scheduling and how once you schedule the things that are important to you, everything else kind of falls into place. And so you're right. If it's 1 day a week that you're having that family time, that family meal, if it's planned in there, it will always happen.
And one of the ways that you can make it happen when you're in those time crunches, and we all have them, whether you're working late, a spouse is working late, your kids are at activity, whatever, you're volunteering, it doesn't really matter. But if you know some cooking secrets, you can meal plan, and meal planning is different for everybody. I'm not a one-size-fits-all meal planner because I don't think one-size-fits-all clothes fits, and I don't think one-size-fits-all meal planning works. So when I work with people, we make a meal plan that will work for you to maintain for your lifestyle. But having said that, if you know that you have 3 or 4 late night activities for somebody in your family, but you do want to sit down for a meal together, don't start from scratch when everybody first comes home. You can do things like batch cooking, which means you're making a lot of something and reusing your leftovers in a very different way for another meal that week. So you're cutting down a great deal of your cooking time. So, and I don't like to, my kids aren't real big on just leftovers. They like repurposed leftovers. And, because you want variety in your life. I mean, who wants to eat the same taco meat Tuesday through Friday? You just don't. So, so there's meal planning with a purpose, meal prepping with a purpose. If you know that 3 things you're going to be wanting to make during the week have onions, cut up all your onions at once. It's saving a lot of time. You're not crying 3 times during the week, just once. I'm a big crier with onions because
yeah, me too.
I don't like them very much. But that's what I try to teach people, how you can consolidate your cooking time so you can have more family time and still make it delicious.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the semi-homemade concept?
Semi-homemade, meaning the boxes that you can buy, the subscription boxes, or using some ingredients from the store?
Using ingredients from the store. Now that you brought it up, we'll talk about the other in a minute.
The subscriptions. Okay, so you don't have to cook everything from scratch. You have to know what you're buying that's already pre-made though, because a lot of ingredients shouldn't be in the food that are pre-made. There's a ton of sugar, ton of sodium, all those things that manufacturers use to boost flavor when it could have been herbs. It could have been different seasonings. So read your label so that you know that you're buying a quality ingredient, because quality in equals quality out. And if you're putting unhealthy or things with lots of preservatives, you got to wonder if it's going to last in a can for 2 years, what's it doing in your stomach? You can buy plenty of ingredients that are going to save you tons of time. Like, I don't know if you have a Trader Joe's by you.
I do.
If you have a Trader Joe's, we're big fans of Trader Joe's down here. And I make a chicken tikka masala for my kids during the week. And I use chicken tenders because they cook quicker than a full chicken breast. So, you want to save your time. And I can make my tikka masala sauce from scratch very, very easily. Or I can open up Trader Joe's jar of tikka masala, which has nothing but pure ingredients in it. So I wholeheartedly support somebody who wants to use bought ingredients for part of their meal planning. All I just suggest is see what's in those ingredients before you buy it.
I would agree. So talking about, we brought up a minute ago about the meal planning services.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll compare, what meal planning and prepping and the where these meal programs fit in. So what are your thoughts? I know I have my thoughts about these programs, but I'd like to hear from someone who does this for a living, who
Sure.
really works with people.
So I have a lot of friends who were very, I'll call them uncomfortable cooks, because they weren't confident in their skills. They didn't know what they were doing. They had very few recipes under their belt that they could pick from. So they decided to use the subscription services. And they learned how to make some very simple foods, but outside their comfort zone, which is what I always recommend, expand your repertoire, and that's really fine. The problem I have with subscription boxes is you are cooking every night because that food is uncooked. And so you're cooking every night, whereas if you were batch cooking, you're not cooking everything from scratch every night. You're not repurposing some of your leftovers. Your onions aren't being cut every single night. You're not cutting your garlic every single night. So for the convenience factor, people think, oh, it's so convenient. I don't have to go grocery shopping. Here's everything. Boom, boom, boom. I just got to cook. Well, no, you still got to prep it. You still got to cook it. And you got to do something completely different the next night. So as a way to expand your repertoire and get ideas, fine. If you're really looking to save time, get an idea with your menu planning. At whatever day of the week you want to do your menu planning, pick 3 days you're going to cook, figure out 2 repurposed leftovers, do your grocery shopping, get it done. That's one of the things I work with my clients.
I like it. So with meal planning and prepping, I know you said earlier that, it's not a one size fits all, but for the most part, when somebody comes to you and they're like, okay, Linda, what do I do with this meal planning and prepping? How do I start?
A couple of things. Know what you have, know what your family likes to eat. Write down the recipes you know how to cook. Everybody's got that handful of go-to recipes, whether it's pasta and pouring out a jarred marinara sauce on it, whatever it is, everybody's got it. Start making a list of what you know, what you can do fast, what you like. Find out what you have in your pantry. Find out what you have in your freezer. Once you know what you have, you can figure out what you need. So if you want to make chicken a couple of days a week because you think that's very healthy for your family, and you want to cut down on your red meats, whatever it is that you want to do, that's fine, but you don't want to make the same chicken dish. So let's take a look at your seasonings. Let's take a look at your sauces. Let's see what we can do with your cooking techniques. Maybe one time you want to make chicken tacos. Maybe you want to make Asian chicken meatballs. There's a million recipes you can do once you start thinking about what you want to eat. And so we get a nice big book of potential recipes. Either I can supply some, I can teach you where to find your recipes, and then we'll look at the shortcuts. And we can say, okay, let's pick those 3 days of a week that you're going to make something. What can we make as sides that we can use another time? I'll go back to that chicken tikka masala recipe. So I'll make that, and I'll make a huge batch of rice. Way more, and my daughter eats a lot of rice, but way more than even she can eat. And what I'll do is I'll wait 2 days and I'll take my leftover rice and I'll make it fried rice. And I could put some grilled shrimp on it, leftover chicken from something else, whatever I want to make a fried rice as a side dish. And the reason why I can do that is to make a good fried rice, you need at least day-old rice. Otherwise, it doesn't work very well. So you've just killed 2 recipes on your meal plan without doing a whole heck of a lot of work. So these are the kinds of things that I work with people on, learning how to repurpose things, learning how to batch, freezing some things. If you're making a huge batch of pesto, freeze some of that pesto in an ice cube tray, pop out an ice cube when you're making some vegetables, let those vegetables put a pesto cube on it. You have now really, really tasty string beans that were otherwise going to be really bland, and you've done no more work. So those are the kind of things we work on.
I love it because everybody that I talk to, they're so afraid of meal planning and meal prepping because they think, oh, I've got to take 2 hours. And my sister and I used to have this conversation all the time. She'd say, well, Denise, I work 5 days a week. I don't want to take a whole afternoon on Sunday and, cook and prep. And I would say to her, but it doesn't have to be that way. And interestingly, when my niece decided to go vegan, she went vegan for a couple of years, and she was doing her own meal planning and prepping. I think it made my sister realize, oh, wait a minute, if the 19, well, she was probably 16 at the time. If my 16-year-old can do this, I can do this too. And she saves so much more time. And the conversation is always a little like, yeah, I kind of told you so. But I've never said I told you so.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is people have a vision in their mind of, and it works for some people, it doesn't work for me, but it works for some people. Every Sunday, somebody goes and does their grocery shopping for the next week or 2 weeks, and they cook and they just parcel it out and they reheat it during the weekend. God bless you if you can do that. I want to have fun outside with my family on Sunday. I do not want to be doing that. But, that's one way. If it works for you, that's fine. So I present alternative ways, and it doesn't have to be so stiff and structured. And the more you do it, and the more recipes you learn, and the more ways that you learn how to substitute ingredients, so you're not in a panic if, oh, I was going to make whatever this dish is and I'm missing this ingredient. If you know what you can substitute, it doesn't really matter. You're not thrown off kilter anymore. So I think that's really very helpful to get rid of the stereotype, to see easy ways to do it. And then the other thing is, people are so nervous that their families are going to hate what they make that they're afraid to make anything new. And stop putting that pressure on yourself. It's food. They're not going to die. They're not going to starve. And it can all be a learning situation. So a lot of women I work with say, oh, my kids won't eat A, my kids won't eat B. They call them picky eaters. I like to say maybe they're selective, because if you tell a kid they're a picky eater, then they're going to like thrive on that. Oh, yes, I'm a picky eater. I can't like anything. So I try to stay away from that term as a practical matter. But what I do is every time I make a dish, which is probably something new every night, there's a variation on the theme of what I'm doing. I always say to my family, even now, is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? And then I don't stop there. And that's what happens to most people. They stop when everybody hates it. I say to my family, and I've said that to them even when they were little, well, what can I do to make it better next time? And then I listen to their suggestions, because now you're training your family to think about what they like to taste. What flavors do they enjoy? What flavors would they like to add to this? So the next time you make this, take some of their suggestions. So it shows you're listening to them, you value their opinions, and then you say, okay, how did this come out? And if it's still a thumbs down or a middle of the road thumb, say, okay, well, what can we tweak it even more? So now everybody's engaged in the process. So they can't be picky because they gave you the damn suggestion, and you're engaging your family in the meal. And so that gets you over a whole lot of hurdles, and it gets over your anxiety because you got no skin in the game. It's a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but you know what? You're telling them you can change.
Right. And it's not personal. I think sometimes, and when I was a young wife, I took things a little personally. I would make things that I had been making for years and loved, but like there are certain things that Mark does not like. He does not like olives. So I had made this delicious chicken Veracruz, but it's got olives in it and capers. And he's like, I don't love it. And so when I make that, I actually add the capers later, the capers and the olives later. This way he doesn't, it's basically still the same dish, just without those few extra flavors. It's a salty, vinegary flavor. You mentioned something earlier, about, knowing your seasonings and being able to change them out. And it made me think of flavor profiles. Can you talk us through a little bit of that? Different spices, what would go with what?
Sure. Well, here I'm going to go back to your comment earlier about store-bought things. So let's talk seasonings for a moment. You can have, and some of this depends on your budget, some of this depends on your cabinet space, some of it depends on your time frames. You can have tons of seasonings in your pantry and use them as you go by, or you can make your own spice blends. So if you know that you're going to be making tacos or fajitas every Tuesday, why don't you take a bin and either put all those seasonings that you use for that kind of meal in one bin. So you're not taking everything out of your pantry looking for those seasonings on Tuesdays. You just take out the bin you have. That's one way of doing it. Or you can buy or taco seasoning. Cut to the chase. If you want to cut down your time in your organization. And there are plenty of great companies who make tremendous flavor blends. So in terms of flavor profiles, read the label of some of those spice blends. What goes into your Greek seasonings, what goes into your Italian seasonings, what goes into a fajita seasoning, what goes into a dry rub if you're making a piece of meat. And all you have to do is just read the labels, get rid of the preservatives, blend it yourself, or go to one of the many companies out there who do it without preservatives. And they're great, huge time savers. Then start getting comfortable and put it on something more than your meat or your seafood or your tofu or your tempeh. Put it on your vegetables. There's plenty of ways you can shake all of that up. So it's interesting because everybody thinks whatever their ethnicity is, this is the right way to make a dish. But I always like to say, if you lived in Italy, Grandma A would make her sauce one way. Grandma B, who lived right next door, would make the same sauce totally different. Yep. Both Italian, so find out what works for you. But the more experimenting you can do, the better off you're going to be, and the less boredom you're going to have in your cooking. Yeah. Because if you want to make those multiple chicken dishes and you're only going to use oregano, salt, and pepper on it every week, or garlic, salt, and pepper, nobody's going to be happy after that.
No one's going to be happy with that. After the first 2 weeks, I'm like, can we do something else? Yeah. What I love about what you said about the seasonings too is basically that's part of that meal prep, making it, making that meal planning and that meal prepping so simple. Yeah. And it's funny that you said that. I did that recently with a rib rub. My husband's from Texas. He loves anything barbecue. So I put together this rib rub that I found a recipe in, I don't know, whatever magazine. And it sounded really good. So I made it, and I've put it on so many things that, that he'll eat, steaks and the ribs. And I mean, it's amazing, like how quick and easy it is because it's all put together.
Yeah, and it's tremendous flavor. Here's another little tip about that. A lot of times people are afraid when they see a recipe to do anything other than what the recipe says.
Yes.
And here's the thing. My family loves garlic. I think, we were like vampire water offers in some past generation, but garlic, oh my God, they just love it on everything. If I look at a recipe and it says 2 cloves of garlic, I go, 2 cloves of garlic. Are you kidding me? And I'm comfortable enough to know that maybe I need 5 or 6 cloves of garlic in that recipe. A recipe is only written for either a generic taste bud or whoever wrote the recipe. But you know what your family likes. And just like you said, that maybe you have to eliminate capers and olives from a dish, and it's still going to be a great dish. One of the things that I work with women are, well, what can you change? What can you substitute? Right. There's no magic about cooking a recipe unless you're baking, because baking is a science and you have to know what measures are going to interact with something else, which is why I rarely bake.
Me too. I'm horrible.
I like to just, this looks good, handful of this, handful of that. Oh, maybe some more of that. I feel tremendous freedom when I cook. Baking, oh my God, I'm looking at that recipe and I do have a little of that terror in my heart.
I agree with you. So it's funny. I once heard Jacques Pepin say, the first time you make a recipe, follow the recipe to the T. And then you know what it's meant to taste like based on that chef or whoever wrote that recipe, like you said, and then tweak it and make it yours.
Yep. Always make it your own.
Always make it your own. And it's so funny that you talk about baking because I'm the worst, because I'm one of those people, I'll measure things. I'm happy to measure, but if I don't exactly have one thing, I'll think, oh, well, I have this instead, and it'll be a great substitute. No substituting in baking is
substituting in baking.
There's no substituting in baking. Oddly enough, so yesterday I made some almond milk. So I had the almond pulp and I thought, what am I going to do with this? And I have a recipe for banana muffins that I just love. It's just a really simple, it's one that I can't screw up. Well, I decided to use the very wet almond pulp, thinking it would be similar to almond flour. It is not. The muffins still taste
fried it in the
good.
oven though, and then ground it, and then it would have been perfect.
Didn't think of that. I'm like, oh, it's almond. I'll just use that. And truly, the muffins taste good. They're a little mushy.
Yep.
But they still taste good. But
because you have the extra moisture in there.
Exactly. So, it's one of those things like where when it comes to like you, when it comes to cooking something, I'm like, what do I know what I have in the pantry. I actually, interestingly, and people will laugh at me because I am a little OCD when it comes to this. I know everything that is in my pantry. I know everything that is in my outside freezer. And once a month, I go through and, check my inventory. And sometimes I have stuff in there. I'm like, where did this come from? I mean, I've got some, we had guests over a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of people brought, an Italian basket, and somebody brought me some stuff from Trader Joe's. So I have stuff that I would never have thought to purchase, but now I have it in my pantry, and I'm going, ooh, what am I going to do with this? So always kind of fun.
And it's always great creativity.
Mm-hmm. And, I think it's important because you mentioned that very early on in our conversation about having a well-stocked pantry and freezer. I know what I think that is. Can you just clarify for some of our listeners, like what are some of the things that they should have in their pantry on a regular basis?
In your pantry, you can either have whatever grains you want, whatever beans you want, and if you want to make them from scratch, that's really great. If you want to have canned beans, my suggestion is make sure you rinse them really, really well, because most of them are packed in tons of sodium and gunky. So if you want to rinse them easily, take a strainer, put the beans in the strainer and just put the water over it. Let it clean itself. Don't try to wash the beans in the can with the gunk in there, but you don't want a variety of grains. You want a variety of rices. You don't have to have just one kind of rice. You can have a black lotus rice, which is very funky when you cook it. You can have basmati rices, arborio rices, if you want to make a risotto, something like that. Jasmine rice. There's wild rice blends. So, you can think out of your box when you're even thinking in a category. You can have your garbanzo beans, black beans. You can make burgers with black beans and garbanzo beans. You can do a million things with those two. And then spread your wings and try other beans. Have a variety of pastas. And it just doesn't have to be, for a while, my son was gluten-free for a very long time because he needed to be. And so we learned how to cook gluten-free. So there's plenty of gluten-free pastas out there if that's either your preference or your need. But think out of the box when you're thinking of pasta, because you can do zucchini noodles as a pasta dish. You can do rice noodles. We love rice noodles. We make those spicy Asian meatballs, and I'll put them on a pad thai, which is just rice noodles with a peanut sauce. And for those who aren't familiar with rice noodles, you take these rice noodles that you can buy in any grocery store for the most part, boiling water on them. Boom, you're done. I mean, they're not even boiling, just putting out boiling water on the noodles and draining it. And peanut sauce, you can make in under 5 minutes. So, and I make my Asian meatballs in the oven because I don't want the splatter all over my range. I just don't want to deal with it. Put them on a sheet pan, bake them 15 minutes. Your meatballs are done. They're spicy. Make a lot. So the next night, instead of putting it on noodles with peanut sauce, crumple them up, put them in a lettuce leaf with Houston sauce. Totally different dinner, but your main course was already done. These are the kinds of things to make your time cooking very quick, but your meal very delicious.
Very delicious. I want your recipe. I want your recipe for those Asian meatballs, because you said Asian meatballs a couple of times, and I'm like, I wrote it down before. I'm like, ooh, Asian meatballs.
So easy, so great. In a nutshell, you can make it with lamb. You can make it with pork. My son loves it with turkey. You can use it with chicken. You can use it with meat. Combine any one of those you want. I take some lemongrass, which if it's a little hard to find, use lemon zest. But I grate up just a little bit of lemongrass, some ginger, some garlic. I like to put in a sriracha sauce, which is a spicy Asian chili sauce. You can use a gochujang, which is a Korean chili paste, which is really, really delicious. And if you're in a real pinch and you have nothing Asian for your Asian meatballs, throw in some Frank's hot sauce. You really can be very flexible. There's no recipe police that's going to come and get you if you have to. Put a little chopped scallions or chopped onions in there. Yum. Roll them up into your meatballs, put them in the oven for 15 minutes, you're done. That's it.
Okay, well, I know what I'm making. I know what I'm making for dinner.
There you go. You could add a little bit of sesame oil, a little bit of soy sauce, just to give it that Asian bigger taste profile. But that's it. It probably takes you 10 minutes to make the meatballs, 15 minutes to cook it. Your pad thai is done in 7 minutes. Not a labor-intensive dinner.
No, it sounds fabulous. I mean, you made, with the meatballs, you made two amazing dishes, and you said it in 2 seconds.
And you can take that leftover rice from your chicken tikka masala and serve it.
There you go. That is awesome. And truly, when you were mentioning like we talked about flavor profiles before, and some of the things, so like, the sriracha, the lemongrass, the ginger, the garlic, that, that definitely is, to me, that's Asian. But if you take the garlic and, you put it with, oregano or some other things, like you've got Italian or you've got Greek. So it's really
recipe, change your seasonings, and you have a totally different kind of dinner.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So I could talk food with you all day. This is so much fun. Okay, so we've got these amazing dinners. We've planned, we've prepped, we know exactly what we're gonna, kind of an idea what we're gonna do. We're at the table with our family. How do we get past? And I love this question. I love that you added this to our conversation or on your jot form here. How do you get past? So, honey, how was your day?
Oh my God, just shoot me. It's a terrible question. Don't ever ask it. Don't ask what you do in school today, because your kids are going to say nothing. It's depressing. So what I like to do, there's many things to do. We play games at our table, and it's a very relaxing way to be at the table, because now there's not a spotlight on you for interrogation. And so you talk and you laugh freely. There's lots of games we play. And in fact, when when my son brought his girlfriend home for the first time and she was coming over for dinner, I said to her, "Did Max tell you that we play games at the dinner table?" And mind you, she was a freshman in college at this point. She wasn't a little kid. She said, "Yes." And I said, "Did he tell you that we expect you to play along with us?" She said, "Yes." And then we played one of our silly many games we play, and she was laughing, and it wasn't, "Oh, what's your major? What are you going to be? What do you want to do? Blah, 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 blah." And it was a great way to have a nice, easy dinner. So, you could take games you have around the house and play the cards without the board, Depending on the age of your kids, do Mad Libs. Who didn't love Mad Libs when they were kids?
I love those when we were kids.
At the table when you're starving for conversation, and you could set your ground rules on how bawdy or not you want it to be, depending on the age of your kids, and they're going to push you on all those little wonderful points. So we have a lot of games that we can play. Another thing that we do is there's usually a food holiday almost every day of the year, and they are stupid. and here's an example. So a long time ago in California, there was an advertising agency, and on the top of their building, they had this huge statue. Half of it was a man's body, and the top of it was a chicken head, and they called it Chicken Boy. And, the town, for some reason, thought this was like the best thing on top of a building. And they eventually moved or went out of business. And the new owners said, "Okay, we're getting rid of this stupid Chicken Boy." And the town was in an uproar. And they said, "No, we love it." And everybody got together and paid for it to be moved into the town park. And they loved it so much, they made September 5 Chicken Boy Day. So if I'm working with you and it's the beginning of September, I'm going to say, "Okay, it's Chicken Boy Day. Let's work on a chicken dish for dinner in honor of Chicken Boy Day. And let's think about what we can talk about at dinner table." So things you can say is, if you were half man or woman and half animal, what would the other half be? Why? What could you do if you were half that animal? Is there something from your childhood that you love so much that you'd want to hand down to your kids? What is it and why? And so you can think of conversations that all of a sudden you really get to know the people who are at your table, because they're non-threatening questions. And, and everybody's going to say, "Oh, I don't know." And I said, "Well, take a minute to think about it, and it makes for your meal times to be interesting, to be fun. And my kids come down to dinner and say, "What are we playing tonight?" And so it also makes them not look at their phones. It also makes them not rush away from the table the minute they finish eating, because they're having fun. And when you have those selective eaters, it makes them want to eat their food because they have so many other things to do instead of worrying about how much they don't like broccoli.
I love it. That's awesome. So we do have to wrap up in a second, but I have one last question for you. And this comes from the culinary expert in me. Linda, what is your one pet peeve or a big pet peeve that you have around the kitchen?
It's a really OCD one, and I'm not really OCD, but I hate it when somebody puts things back in the wrong place. And I am not the neatest person by any stretch of the imagination. I am not that organized, but I have a place for my knives. I have a place for my lemon zester. I put all similar tools together. It's not hard to figure out. All those kinds of things belong in one spot. And yet I have to search my kitchen when somebody else puts it away. Drives me nuts.
I love it. I sympathize. I really feel your pain on that one. Truly, I do, because I'm the same. I bet our kitchens are probably set up very similarly. This has been such a joy, Linda. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and these fun tips to make mealtime healthy, interesting, delicious, and fun.
It's been a real pleasure to be here. And I think I gave you a link for your listeners. I do have a freebie for them. So if they want, I think it's for easy one dish dinners.
Yeah, please let us know. Tell us where people can find that. And I will make sure that all of this information is in the show notes.
Okay, so I'll make sure you have the link because it's easier to read it than for me to say it. But your listeners can find me on Facebook at Easy Weeknight Dinners for Busy Moms. They can find me at Balaboosta Secret. I have a website. I should say in my Easy Weeknight Dinners for Busy Moms, I'm running a game starting Sunday. We're doing Banish the Dinnertime Blues Bingo, and there will be prizes. So it's a free group. Join the group. If you give me your email, you'll get the bingo board. You'll get some sample recipes. And it's just a 4-day game just to shake up your cooking a little bit, but it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to post that in our Facebook group through our social media, because I think this would be something that everyone needs to check out, because it sounds like it'd be a lot of fun.
Thank you. That would be fantastic. And, my best advice to everybody is it's food. It's fun. Enjoy it. Take the stress off your shoulders and start creating those wonderful memories. You can easily turn ordinary meals into extraordinary meals with ease, speed, yum, and fun.
I love it. Thank you again, Linda.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you everyone for listening. This is the Wonder Series. We're here every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Till next week, I leave you with this: healthy living, happy life. Have a great week, everyone.